Finance Minister. More importantly, Sushil Kumar Shinde replaces Chidambaram in the Home Ministry. He has been nothing short of a disappointment. Every single target at the Power Ministry has been missed under Shinde. He left office on a day that India was left powerless, and God alone knows how the Home Ministry is going to have to be dealt with under Sushil Kumar Shinde. But more on that in a bit. Joining us now to discuss the worst power outage that India has seen in its history, and of course Chidambaram returning to Finance Ministry, is former Power Minister Suresh Prabhu and the President of the Confederation of Indian Industry, Adi Godrej. Gentlemen, appreciate you joining us here on India Business Hour. Mr. Prabhu, let me come to you first. You have dealt with the power sector and its problems. This is the worst problem that India has seen in over a decade. In the last 24 hours, we've seen the northern grid collapse twice, followed by the eastern and the northeastern grid today. What we understand is that UP was the main culprit. They overdrew by about 2,000 megawatts. Haryana and Punjab overdrew by about 500 to 600 megawatts. A committee has now been set up by Shinde to probe this matter, but that's really not going to be enough. How do we rectify this?
You know, in fact, this failure of grid is evidence of the fact that all those issues which actually need to be put in place for power to be generated, transmitted and distributed finally and then consumed, there is a failure at almost all levels, which is very clearly evident from the fact that the grid has failed. See, the grid failure is not just one single accident. There are so many sequence of events which actually finally get into that grid. For example, there is not enough generation to meet our demand. There is not enough transmission capacity to ensure that we are able to get all that power that is required at any given point of time into the grid. Secondly, even at the distribution end, we are not able to make sure that we'll be able to island some of these issues and properly manage it properly. So I think it's a very serious issue. This technical failure, of course, is right now it is caused by the fact that there is no grid discipline which has been followed. There has been a grid manual which has been put in place. There has been a grid discipline which has been put in place 12 years ago when I was the minister in fact. But unfortunately, it worked for more than a decade, but now it has suddenly collapsed. So I think we really need to now revisit all the issues, look at from all possible angles. I want to talk to you
about that. Before I talk to you about the larger structural issues, let me talk to you about the grid discipline, because let's just take the example of UP. The UP State Electricity Company did actually overdraw in 2010, in 2011, and it's done it once again. So, this whole business of the CERC penalizing and holding people accountable, grid discipline, that's all talk. It seems to be that way.
The grid discipline is something which cannot be taught in the school. This has to be practiced on the ground when the power is actually generated and immediately distributed. So the CERC can give guidelines, we can have a grid manual, we can put all that into place. But finally, on that particular day, at that particular minute, how you operate the grid is very critical. So it is like very easy to tell that how Sachin Tendulkar should have played that stroke in the classroom, but he has to finally face that ball, and that particular moment, how he faces that ball and how plays that ball is going to decide whether he's going to get out or he's going to play that ball and put it outside the boundary. So that particular point is very important. So therefore, what is important is we must empower our people in the load dispatch centers to take action. If the state is not listening to you, is not following a discipline, you must be able to take a penal action in terms of disconnecting it immediately. It's not that henceforth we'll be able to post facto, we'll be able to put penalty on them and recover some monetary terms, some sort of inaction that was caused. So I think really we must be able to do that.
Mr. Prabhu, all that we've seen happen is heads have rolled and it's actually lowly bureaucrats who've been moved around. What difference does it make to move bureaucrats around at the end of what has been, chaos for the last 24 hours?
No, in fact, if you really look at it, which is something which is we really need to take a now very serious relook at the whole issue. In fact, I have been saying that this is an issue which goes beyond one particular ministry. It's not just a power ministry, it's a coal ministry, it's oil and gas ministry, it's also Ministry of Renewable Energy, the planning commission is involved into this, and there are so many attendant ministries have to play a role into this. Finance has some role to play, the home has to play some role. So I think Prime Minister must take a leadership, must bring all those ministries into the fold, also get states on board and have one long duration meeting in which we must chalk out a clear-cut map in which the political economy also must be taken into account. So we must realize the sensitivity of this. We must talk to the political leaders of various political parties and let us make it as a national mission to actually address it. This is not something which I am telling you. Power Ministry is not the only one which can actually handle it. But at the same time, it's not that the Power Ministry can just say that, we are not responsible, so nothing can be done. So there has to be a single point
I agree with you there.
Action must be initiated, buck must stop somewhere.
That's right. But let me go across to Adi Godrej. Mr. Godrej, forget the kind of trouble that 600 million Indians have had to deal with over the last 24 hours, the northern grid collapsing today, and today 21 states being left powerless. Thousands and thousands of crores of rupees have virtually been done away with on account of this power outage. From an industry point of view, I know CII and FICCI have put out statements, but, what is the kind of losses that you anticipate on account of what we've seen happen?
It's huge. The problem is very severe, and very clearly it's not come about overnight. Yes, right now it's a grid failure which might be due to some lack of discipline. However, the problem has its roots over several years. Although we have power plant capacity which is not being utilized because of coal shortage, we are importing coal, we are allowing the Australians and Indonesians to benefit from that, and yet we have very large coal reserves which have not been exploited. Coal India needs to work much more, needs to expand, and I don't see why we are not allowing the private sector into coal mining. I think it's about time we do that. It's about time we see to it that our resources are utilized. Yes, clean coal is very important. There are many technologies available, and we should go ahead very rapidly to do that. Otherwise, we'll see more of these power outages, I'm afraid.
How badly do you think, Mr. Godrej, this has tarnished the image of India? We've already been facing flack from the international community, but how badly do you think the incident over the last 24 hours has tarnished India's image?
I think quite a lot. I think the perception will be negative. We've recently had the labor problems in Manesar which have added to the perception problem. Earlier we had the retrospective amendments which added to the perception problem. Unfortunately, we are accumulating negative perceptions about the country. It's about time we sat down, took notice and acted to get things going again in the country.
Right, Mr. Godrej, since I have you here with me, I just want to get in a quick word from you. Mr. Chidambaram, now the new finance minister, we understand that there was supposed to be a meeting with the Prime Minister and India Inc. Tomorrow. I don't know if that meeting still stands or not, but what was going to be your list of demands to the Prime Minister, because you're perhaps now going to have to submit that to the new finance minister?
Well, we are very glad that Mr. Chidambaram has been appointed the finance minister. CII is pleased to see that. He is an extremely experienced hand at the finance ministry, and we need such an experienced hand at the helm of the finance ministry right now. We clearly need to get the reform process going forward. I would say the two important agendas from the finance ministry is to see to it that the GST is enacted as early as possible, and to see that fiscal discipline is restored through both containing subsidies and disinvestment process being taken forward. And we do hope Mr. Chidambaram will act on this. I think it's extremely important, and CII would like to discuss these issues with him at the earliest.
All right, Mr. Prabhu, I'm going to end with you. We heard from the Power Minister assuring Indians that this is not going to be something that can be repeated, but that's a false promise, is it not?
So I think India really needs a full-time power minister. India does not need a minister who can handle portfolios, 2-3 portfolios at the same time, because this is really a dedicated job. One must full-time attention is required to be given to this. And in fact, there is need to bring about more coordination between various aspects of the power ministry, which goes beyond the ministry, the fuel, the finance, the connectivity part, the states to be taken on board, the renewable part. So I think really speaking, there has to be an institutional mechanism which must be created at the level of the government so that all the issues can be tackled at one single point, and that needs to be done on a very, very urgent and a priority basis. There is also the nuclear power, which is handled by some other ministry.
Right.
So I think we really need to bring all that into one single fold and must create an integrated operating authority which can actually take decisions on this on an emergency basis. And additionally, I think it's the time that at political level we must engage with the chief ministers of different states, because I'm sure all the states, when they draw more power, that means they realize that they need to produce more power. So if they are just by drawing from the grid, it's not going to give them the power on a long-term basis. So if they can understand that why they are drawing more power, because they want to give more to the people, because people are demanding more power. So why not actually on a sustainable basis create an atmosphere wherein we'll be able to meet the demand of all the people on a long-term basis. So if you have a 10-year time frame, I'm sure we'll be able to solve this problem, because this is not a rocket science. This is a very simple thing to do, and therefore I think really we need to work on it.
Well, let's just hope that the new power minister actually manages to get something done as far as the power ministry is concerned. Adi Godrej, Suresh Prabhu, appreciate you joining us here on India Business Hour.
But Kiran, it's been a day of headlines, so let's start off.